This is my 72-year-old father with his paper Why I Became Muslim from 1999.
I wrote this a long time ago. My style, I hope, has improved since then, but this is the gist of it. My background is fundamentalist Christian. I went to a fundamentalist Christian college my first year. I was a lay minister. I preached sermons, and led singing. I led about 5 people to Christ according to the fundamentalist Christian text. I had read the Bible through 3 times before finishing high school and going to college. I accepted the call to the ministry that first year. My family was very pleased to have a minister in the family, and frankly, that was what I wanted and suited me as well. I was. It was wonderful to be young and have a family behind me and proud of me. However, deep in my makeup was something else. More than anything else, I wanted to serve God and do what was right. My moral values were more important to me than my political sense of correctness. I came at odds with the leaders of the church over evolution, which I believe is God's way of creating life as we know it, and the Vietnam War. I studied and believed the involvement in the war was a tactical and moral mistake. History has proven this right over time. In 1966, my church was very militant for the war. It was difficult for me as well. I was a young man of courage. I wanted to fight and be known for this. My father had been a veteran of World War II, as had all of my uncles. I wanted that, but became a war resister and entered the Coast Guard rather than Marines because of that conviction. This was my first political break with my family's Southern political military tradition, as well as my conflict with the church over science. Another factor that undid my commitment to Christianity was the purchase of a book, The Essential Unity of All Religions by Bhagwan Das, a Hindu writer. I bought this book at a used book sale in Phoenix with the hope of using the quotation from all the world scriptures to do missionary work in India and convert the heathens to the true religion of Christianity. In fact, it was I that was converted. The book, by putting side by side the scriptures of the world, showed very clearly that they were saying the same thing, only in different languages in most areas. As well, some of the more thorny concepts of Christianity are better explained in the Upanishads, Quran, and other scriptures than they were in the Bible. This revelation, these revelations led to my dropping out of the ministry and beginning a lifelong search for truth. I went through many faiths and religions and have studied and prayed with many groups, including Hindus, Jews, Baha'is, Unitarians, Universalists, and other Christian sects, as well as Muslims. I was trained to be a fundamentalist Christian speaker and leader. It is this role that I'm most comfortable in. It's only the theology that has been, if only the true theology had been true to me. I would have preferred to remain in that faith. It was and is comfortable to me, but I may have found. Sorry, I would have preferred to have remained in that faith. It was and is comfortable to me. It may have been what I wanted. It was not what God had in mind for me. I became a structural engineer. This is one of my professions. At that time, in 1999, I was a practicing chiropractic physician. I never earned a dime for any of these religious studies or works that I have done. I have worked through my professions and personal work to make life better for the world. At least that's been my intent. One of those opportunities came when Arabian American Oil hired me. I went to Saudi Arabia to work. I listed Christian on my work application, as that was the religion of my birth, and went there. There I came to feel more at home than any place I have been, before or since. I do not speak or read Arabic, but in working with the people, I came to feel part of them. It wasn't like that at first. At first, I was fascinated by a foreign country, very different from America. Then I began to be homesick and was very unhappy with all things Arabian, as are most people when uprooted from one culture to another. Then in time, the ideas, paradigms, and way of living that I was exposed to became part of me. When I came home, I was part Arabian, and my thinking never went back to the way it was before. The one thing I did in this phase was to attend lectures on Islam at the University of Petroleum and Minerals in Tehran. I began this study of Islam. I did not join or make any public professions of faith or attend the masjids. This is where I was introduced to Islam. I did not join because it did not seem to be a politically correct thing to do at the time, and on returning to America, I had no contact with Islam. Still, the events in Saudi Arabia brought me to Islam many years later. I'm 54 years old. I was 54 years old at that time. I have worked hard all my life. I'm a civil structural engineer, doctor, and professional. Yet, in leaving Arabia, I have never had a good job, nor have I been allowed to work. And that was in 1974, and since then I haven't had a good job. That's right. I have never had a good job, nor have I been allowed to work or appropriately paid for the work I was doing. Part of this is a violation of something I thought was a fundamental right in America, the right to work, to live, and be paid for your work. While in Arabia, I was approached by a member of an agency of our government and offered a substantial tax-free income to do extra work for them. They said they'd come pick me up in the night, I would go do something for them, and I'd be back the next morning. Nobody would know the difference. And they would double my salary and put it in a non-taxable account. At that time, I was deep in my studies of Islam, and I had taken some oaths to serve those who were paying me for my work. I believe this extra work would have been in conflict with my oaths as an engineer and as a mason to the nation of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia paid me. I built buildings for them. I worked on oil rigs for them. I did the North Shore oil field in Safaniya was mine. I was in charge of that for a while. At that time, I was deep in my studies of Islam and had taken some oaths to serve those who were paying me for my work. I believe this extra work would have been in conflict with my oath as an engineer and a mason. Saudi Arabia paid me. I built buildings for them. To them, I owed my allegiance to serve them honestly while they're employed. In addition, I believed, as many, if not most Americans believe, that this agency had been responsible for the death of President Kennedy and at least tens of thousands of innocent people worldwide, and that expanded into the millions by this time. I did not want to work for them, nor did I want to be killed. And in the 30-something years intervening, it's been clear that this agency has seriously damaged both the interest of America and the Arabian world. And so I'm pleased that I didn't want to take their money. It just would have been wrong. I did not want to work for them, nor did I want to be killed. I thought it was an offer I could refuse if I did so quietly. I did nothing to expose them for their work at that time. I just did not want to be part of them. Within days after this, I found my work being undermined, and I was given less and less significant work. I was in charge of approximately $100 million worth of construction by that time, and I ended up designing a couple of outhouses before the time I left, with no reason for that cutback in my work. Before this offer, I was working on housing procurement and had improved the quality of portable housing being brought into the kingdom and reduced the cost by many millions of dollars. I do not know what they had in mind for me. That is the government, my government. However, knowing that the work I was doing, I believe it probably would have been nothing more than laundering money for return to the U.S. via their business fronts. I quit and returned to the United States. On returning to America, I was 29 years old, had been a project manager, and was having a very rapidly rising career. I thought I'd return to engineering and continue successful work I'd done before in San Francisco. However, in the last 25 years, Even though I put out nearly 1,000 applications, I've never had a single good job offer, despite my record of having done quality work for all my employers. I had some savings from my work in Saudi Arabia and decided to go to chiropractic college. I thought if I wasn't going to work as an engineer, being a doctor and an alternative doctor that provides quality health care would be a way of helping people. So that's what I wanted to do. I had the money to pay I had the money to pay for most of this and completed my doctorate. I took jobs teaching in a few colleges and a clinic in Scotland. These jobs, as was not unusual for a beginning doctor, were not very well paid. I opened several practices over the years, but not made a decent living in any of them. I do not really think all this is entirely because of my problems with the government agency. I'm a problem solver. A chiropractor is basically a 9-to-5 kind of job. You work on people, you present a good sales procedures, you manage an office, and I'm a problem solver. In the Middle East, I solved I was most noted for, they had a desalinization unit that made fresh water out of seawater. And it had been malfunctioning for 7 years. They're going to have to scrap the whole thing and spend millions of dollars replacing it. I spent a couple of weeks studying it, getting it working again. Got written up in all the journals there for that. I like to solve problems. Doing the actual work of an engineer was more fun than managing by a long ways. I'm a problem solver, not a 9-to-5 kind of man. And all my work as an engineer and elsewhere, my big contribution has been that I will work 20 hours a day and solve problems to get anything working that's broke. Nevertheless, I do not do well with repetitive work, like being a chiropractor. Still, I've always had problems getting business. But still, I still always had problems getting business loans. My phones didn't work. Just calls wouldn't come through, and I couldn't get the capital I needed to work. My first love has always been writing. This is the main thing. It goes all the way back to when I started writing when I was 10 years old. Published my first article when I was 14. That's always what I wanted to do, and everybody said you're a scientist. You got all those technical skills in math and science. You got to do that. So I did. I went to school and studied sciences and math rather than just writing. But I wanted to write. So being a chiropractor gave me time to write, and I started slowly. My first love had always been writing. I love to write and spread knowledge of ideas. I like teaching in the colleges I taught in. I taught in 4 colleges over the years, chiropractic, and 1 junior college. Inspired thinking in my students. In time, I started writing. I came out with a controversial book on health, Love Thine Enemies and Heal Thyself. I came out with that in 1996, and it's still in print. It is a title and topic that I know does not appeal to most people. However, I also know that if they knew about it, at least a few million people would buy it. And in the use of the therapies that I haven't written down yet, would save a few million lives, particularly in things like bird flu and the flus that are not susceptible to antibiotic treatment, but are susceptible to colon treatment.
They said it works in Ebola very well.
What?
They said it works in Ebola very well.
Okay, it may not have been published. I couldn't find the references on that, but Ebola I would suspect that it would work well, and I just never had a chance to experiment with it, as in going to Africa and doing it, or seeing any write-ups of it. But people have survived it, and they haven't survived it from traditional medical care. The way it works is
well in Northwest Africa, it is traditional medical care, and the people from there know.
But the gist of it is, it works by the heat. You put heat in the colon, hold the water there for 15 minutes. It activates the immune system. Ebola, I think, may be correctable by that, but particularly swine flu, or bird flu is. So it's an important book for world health, and it's being suppressed for financial reasons. There's no money made doing that. When I came out with this book, I met a wall of opposition worse than before. Every avenue to try to get it out and get money to finance were blocked. even though the need was there and the market was there. I know this book can help millions of people have better lives and bring them closer to God in their lives, whatever their religion. I did not think of going back to my religious roots until I heard of a former minister promoting and selling the way of life I advocated in the book and in all my writings. That is, being vegan and living right. I met with him and his group at their center in North Carolina, and we talked and negotiated for 3 weeks. He wanted a writer to take the work and make it religious. It would be directed at fundamentalist Christians. This was a natural to me, something I could do in my sleep, and I liked it. It was promoting dietary and health work. I had been doing it for more than 20 years and was just rewriting it in a vernacular. All I had to do was just rewrite what I had written in a vernacular of the church in which I grew up. I rewrote one of my articles on Candida as a Christian format for him and submitted it. I was pleased and he was pleased. My life is and has been a religious life. Up to this point, it was divided. I promoted health, knowing being healthful was important to being spiritual, but always kept a wall between the two, and usually lived in tremendous isolation with my religious thoughts. At that point, these discussions decided to do what I knew was right, serve God, and openly through my work as a doctor. After weeks of waiting and talking, nothing happened. I became suspicious about the nature of his work. I asked a reasonable salary and had been willing to do any and all work that was needed. Due to my writing talents and nature of my knowledge, it was virtually impossible for them to have found any other candidate that could bring these skills as a physician, knowledge of diet, health, and fundamentalist Christianity to the work. And I had a total commitment to the work that they were doing in their operation However, in meeting them, I'd ask them to pray. Never did they offer. They wouldn't pray with me. Never did they offer or know where you could find the kind of foods we were discussing in the town where they lived. So they weren't feeding me, so I wanted to go to a restaurant and eat, as in a vegan restaurant. They didn't even know where one was, and that's what they were teaching. They eventually decided not to associate with me. They made a very substantial income selling supplements and other things that are not bad, but apparently were their focus. I believe the religion and service of God may be secondary to financial gain in their operation, as it is in many healthcare operations. I watch a lot of public television, and the public television has some great programs, and the guys are presenting good stuff for the most part. In there, but it's better. It's frankly a lot better now than it was when I was working before. There are doctors like Dr. Amin that are coming out with good programs, and Deepak Chopra, and I'm not trying to cut anybody short. I just don't remember all of them right now. That seem to be putting out work that's not all based on money. Just a challenge in medicine. Still, this was 1999, and I decided to come out of the closet on serving God in my work. I wanted to be part of a religion that would honor this. I tried to re-enter my youth and join a fundamentalist Christian group. That failed. I had been attending a New Age service led by a white-robed guru in Oregon for some time. I liked the group. I liked the leader. When I had sought them out and attended their meetings, what they followed, the way of eating and living, was what I advocated. I was always happy to be among them. I went to them. I went to their yearly gathering along with several hundred other people and presenters. I brought my books and articles. In an entire weekend, only one person bought one book. It was an omen. Within a few weeks, the group weakened and the leader and his wife split. Just after he had installed himself as the father of the church, and her as the mother. Their split was apparently for reasons of his causing. He revealed a distinct lack of honesty in dealing with these situations, and brought question to his veracity in all situations. I'd wanted to be a fundamentalist again. God closed that door. had a second choice. I wanted to be a member of a New Age group that shared my health practices. So I closed that door. I returned to the faith that I joined for 10 years during the 1980s. I still have a great respect for them, and they are a major church in mainstream America. They're one of the fastest growing faiths, and a faith that takes good care of families and great moral values. They don't smoke or drink, and they're very down to earth in the practice of their religion. I went to the bishop and asked for his help in my work. I knew the church would not help directly because I'm an alternative health provider, and they work with everybody. So the medical doctors are a very strong presence in the church, even though there are chiropractors that are there too. But they don't try to promote one or the other. It's fair enough. My work is both not mainstream, and the nature of my work and writings on enemas and traditional medicines is viewed by some as inappropriate or controversial. Still, I knew some of the individuals in the church could easily help and would know that I was doing what was right, and that was more the standard way of doing it. What happens within that faith and others, they don't sponsor one group over the other, but if you're a good Democrat or a good Republican or a good chiropractor or a good naturopath or whatever, they may be somebody with the resources to finance you as an individual, and the church doesn't get involved. This is fair enough. Still, could easily help and knew what I was doing right. To promote my books and articles and enable me to live for the rest of my life doing this work. I had laid out financial plans, promotions, and other work to support me and my family. I worked as a doctor in construction part-time. So that work would go forward, and I would continue to do God's work in my life. This was important to me. It's also important to my 4 children. Their faiths and lives have been damaged by my constant poverty. And that has been a major disappointment in life, but I wanted to help them more than I could and was financially constrained. Their lives and faiths have been damaged by my constant poverty while seeking to serve God and mankind. I had high hopes. In discussions, it seemed possible that this would happen, that finally, after 25 years of poverty and hard work, that the capital I needed to serve God and support my family was at hand. I went back to their church for services and prayed that it would be over, that I would be able to work and be paid for my work and serve God. Although they seemed to be with me, it didn't happen. Nothing came of it. Every time I prayed for guidance and for God to tell me what to do, I used their scriptures. Nothing ever made sense. Nothing ever was as it should be. Guidance and direction and support never came. It was during this period that I remember my 54 years, and in my 54 years, the only time anyone ever paid for my work in an appropriate fashion, and during my time in Saudi Arabia. While working as an Islamic nation, I was paid honestly. I worked and contributed substantially to their needs and was paid as agreed. I went to a masjid in Portland. I tried for days to reach the main masjid. Actually, I had done that for years. I would call masjids just to want to go and get some knowledge. And for almost decades before 1999, I never reached anybody who could speak English on the phone. And so I ended up not going to the masjids because I couldn't find anybody to talk to. This was different. In 1999 in Portland, I called and I got the imam on the phone. And the imam not only spoke English, he was from here.
A lot of people have remarked that 10 years before they joined, they phoned somewhere and somebody either didn't speak English or didn't feel like answering any questions.
So I just never got through, but I got through to him, and he told me the time. He said, "Come down, I'd love to meet you." And I went down and met him. I've lost my place a second. I found a masjid in a poor area of town that answered the phone. I got the address and went down. I happened to be wandering on a Friday evening. The imam and one other person were there. We talked for more than 3 hours. Everything he said made sense to me. He gave me a Quran, reached in his pocket, and pulled out $20. He said to use this for my work. And in all the years I sought help from religious groups to serve God, that $20 was the only money that I was ever given me. Every time I picked up the Quran and thumbed through it, answers jumped out at me. Every time I attended the masjid, the imam spoke with great meaning and sincerity about issues that were burning in my heart. In a year of searching, I'd sought to become part of the faith of my youth. Certainly, this would have been the most comfortable to me, to rejoin that which is most natural to me, since I was raised in this faith. I sought the support and help of those whom I had joined as a friend and shared their lifestyle. I sought to go back to the church that I had been a member of for 10 years. All this failed. Clearly, last of the four doors that opened was Islam. I did not want or seek out Islam as a faith. It is of no benefit for me in any tangible way that I can see, and that's got even worse. Being Muslim in America is not anyway. It's not a thing I would choose if I was choosing, because the political and military problems that have developed. I don't speak the language. I don't know the customs. Nor there's any political, financial, or social benefit for me in believing this faith that God chose for me to embrace. The only person that gave me anything real towards God's physical work in my life to help others was the imam. $20, and that is certainly a long way from the $25,000 that I needed to capitalize the work. But it was symbolic. It opened a door. Within a few weeks, a job came through that provided income for 6 months that helped me survive. During that time, I prayed facing Mecca, without knowing how to pray properly, but the best I can. Right, that sounds bad. During the time I prayed facing Mecca, without knowing how to pray properly, I did the best I could. I knew in 1975, when I was in Arabia, that there is one God, Allah, and Muhammad, his prophet. When returning to America, I put this away because I felt being a Muslim in America was not likely to be helpful to me, and I don't see how it's helpful to me now. I mean, definitely. At least in a social and political sense. In 1999, it was clearly the only way to go. I had been able to choose a religion for personal gain, it would not have been Islam. God had to pick me up and kick me into this religion. The only reason I have and can see for being a Muslim is that I am where I am closest to God, and clearly is where God wants me. I have had much to learn of Islam. The Imam told me that my health work was valued. It is not taught as a part of Islam. He said that there are many Muslims that follow the vegan diet and other natural health care practices, but that I could not say that it was a requirement or teaching of Islam to follow my health practices, but that I could certainly teach them and practice these principles as a Muslim. This is very reasonable. Health and health teaching changes with increasing knowledge. Faith in God did not. As well, there is no reason to make additional requirements on others in following Allah. The work I do is for a better world. I oppose smoking, alcohol, drugs, eating animal products. Some of these things are prohibited in the Quran. Others are not. It is an individual choice. This is my personal service to God, and many others have different services, and sometimes these services conflict, as they often do in war, where the members of one faith or in religion can oppose each other in a battlefield. There are differences of opinion among Muslims in areas of healthcare and lifestyle as well. The masjid is reserved for those fundamental areas where we all agree, the 5 pillars of faith. Outside of this area, the areas of diet and lifestyle, the Quran specifically excludes some things and leaves others up to the individual. We can all pray together and serve Allah together in the masjid, even though we disagree in other areas of life and health. So my work again is partially secular, but acceptable to God. I have found much comfort in returning to Islam and know Allah Akbar, God is great. God did not guide in the ways I wanted or preferred, but in God's way. I know in following Islam, I follow God. Thank you. That was 19 years ago.
Okay, and to those who are wondering, and if you could keep the paper facing the other way, or the Bhagavad Das's the essential unity of all religions is going to be up on the channel after me and Father go through it, and parallels to his experience were I had read the Bible 21 times before finishing high school, and I was more or less trained, much better than your typical person out on the street now, to become a missionary for that specific conservative Christian faith in which I was raised. And to answer in terms of the last one, to put it in different terms, is that there's what's lawful for everybody, but there's wholesome that may be specific to your climate or the area you live, or some other feature. But but drugs of all sorts, some people don't know what calmer means, or they pretend they don't know, but that includes all recreational drug use. But it was my father that I went to when I was 7 years old, being trained in physics and certain other sciences to a degree that your typical person at community college would not know. As a 7-year-old, I went to my father, noticing some of the contradictions and some issues with the Bible, and I thought, I could do better by editing this, or I don't know how I said it, but my father said some words that encouraged me, and I had spent the next 11 years looking into different things. He had introduced me to material by Deepak Chopra. I've since found better material in that field, but he also exposed me to Joseph Campbell, and more or less encouraged me to figure out my own truth and continue to accept science and not to consider science as separate from faith or anything like that. But there was more I could have added, but that is it. But I do know those questions would have been asked by somebody on the video, or they might have been, so